Hey everyone. So I'll start off the stream by saying Rutten Putin, shut up. And now that that's out of the way, what is this stream about? So I'm not going to be playing any games in this stream. This is basically me just mumbling and talking about what I've done, how things have been. Maybe I'll talk about how things will be. Maybe not, I don't know. I have to say that I should probably have prepared better for this, but I did not expect like more than one person to actually watch this. So yeah, it's a bit weird to see all of you guys here in the stream. So yeah, so let's get this thing started. YouTuber apology music plays. Oh yeah, I did put music in the background because it relaxes me. If you guys notice that during the stream I'm sweating, that is because of two reasons. First, I'm probably a bit nervous, and second, it's really hot in here. I don't have air conditioning in this room. And right now in Israel, it's like the Sahara Desert, so it's really hot in here. But we'll get through it together. I think we'll be fine. Yeah, alright, so let's get this started. First of all, I'll start by a little introduction for those of you who are new to the channel, maybe those of you who haven't had a chance to know who this guy is, who is behind the voice, giving us instructions on how to mod games. So I'm a player HOI. A lot of people, including our beloved Rutten Putin, my co-developer on the Cold War mod, has hi everyone. Has wondered about why is it player HOI and does it change with a different game? Well, at first it was only player, and the reason I chose player is because player has a lot of meanings in Hebrew. It can be both a computer player and it can also be like an actor. So that is why I chose player. And so at first it was player, and when I got onto the Paradox forums, I changed it to player HOI because player was taken. And I think that the game that I played most back then was Hearts of Iron 3. So I went with player HOI, and that's where we are at. Alright, so that's me, that's player HOI. I'm 33 years old. I live in Israel, a fact that some people seem to have missed, despite the fact that occasionally I will mention it. Some of you may know things about Israel because of history, and some of you may know Israel as a place that is not controversial at all in our modern lovely world. But yeah, I'm from Israel, and it is what it is. Not much I can do about it at the moment. Alright, so we'll start this. I have this little thing here with notes, so that is why I keep looking over here. So we'll start this thing, the stream of 10K subscribers by saying a big thank you to all of you who have done any interaction with the channel. When I started it, I didn't really think that it would grow that much because modding is such a niche. Not a lot of people do it. And I think that maybe, well, I don't want to like embellish or give myself too much credit, but when I started the channel, there weren't a lot of good sources on modding. If you went and you searched for a modding video, how to mod something, then it was like the I'm feeling lucky button in Google. The results you would get would be would vary quite a bit in quality, and that is something that I actually wanted to change. I wanted to introduce modding to people who haven't modded before, and that's how the channel started. So I really want to thank everyone who has taken a role in the channel in one way or another. If you've subscribed to the channel, if you commented on the channel, if you liked the videos on the channel, all of that really helped it grow. And at the moment, I think that the Iron Workshop is actually probably the only big channel dedicated to modding Paradox games. Now, unfortunately, I can't cover all of them. I wish I could cover more games, but I'm just one person, and there's only so much I can do. Question. While I'm modding and changing country colors for new nations, most of the country colors change. Yeah, okay, so Varian, I won't be talking about specific modding stuff during this live stream, because then we would really get carried off, but you can take a look at the first comment in that video lesson, and you will have a solution for that there, because a lot of people have encountered that issue, which is totally understandable. All right, so so again, thank you all, and a big thanks again to the Patreons who are supporting this channel. I guess that people who are not YouTubers aren't always aware of how much time-consuming and energy this stuff can actually be, because ultimately we get the final product, right? So myself, I'm subscribed to other channels, and at the end of the day, what I see is the final product. I don't see any of the work that was put into it. And there's a lot of work to be done even on things like these. So having a bit of support doing that work is really amazing. And the people who have supported the channel on Patreon are really amazing people, and I thank them for every bit that they give. For those of you who haven't seen my Patreon page, because I have so much stuff to do, I've learned a bit after opening my Patreon that it doesn't make sense to promise things that I can't really deliver on. That is why on my Patreon page there's only one tier, and there's only the option to like pledge $1. Because honestly, I expect people to give me the same amount they would be getting back, right? I mean, I don't want anyone to feel like they've given too much money and they're not getting enough in return. And I think that's enough. That's really enough. I mean, I will continue doing this probably even if I didn't have Patreon. But it's nice to have that. It's nice to have that recognized by those people who give even something as small as $1, but it has a lot of meaning behind it. All right, so let's move on to the next thing. We've got a lot of stuff to talk about. So why have I started the channel? So I talked about that a little bit already. But there is actually one more aspect that I did not talk about. So, yes, thank you all of you guys who are giving appreciation in the chat. This is really humbling, and I'm really glad that this channel has helped so many of you to maybe get into modding and actually do the things that you wanted to do in these games. Right, so there was another reason why I started this channel. Hearts 4 was released in 2016, towards the end of the year. And this channel was opened a bit after the release of Hearts 4. And as Hearts 4 was released, I knew that at some point I would be making a big total conversion mod for it. And I figured that I would need developers to help me in making the mod. So one way to get developers or inexperienced people was to get them on the team and then teach them while they work on the mod. Another way was to just create these tutorials that explain how to mod aspects of the game, let them learn, and then maybe get them on the team. So that is another aspect why the Iron Workshop actually exists, because I needed developers to later on help me on a project, which in fact did happen at the end, and that is the Cold War mod. So that is why we have the Iron Workshop channel. Another reason is that, of course, I was curious how this whole YouTube thing works. It was 2012, so the whole YouTuber thing was really coming into itself and becoming a reality, with a lot of people giving it a try. So I wanted to give it a try as well and see how it works, and here we are. So it was definitely something worth doing. I definitely don't regret it. I mean, there are a lot of difficult moments during this process, but overall it was fun, and really the feedback has been amazing. Obviously, some people sometimes give feedback in very different ways, but overall, really the feedback was amazing, and I'm totally glad that I did this. All right. So what next? Next we've got how did I get into modding? Okay. So so I've been playing computer games since I was 5. Actually, let me think about this. Yeah, so it wasn't computer games at first. We couldn't really afford a computer. My family couldn't afford one. So I played on a bootlegged console that was supposed to be like a Nintendo console. But it was made, I think, in Russia, and it was selling like hotcakes in Israel. And everybody whose family couldn't afford the real consoles bought these bootlegs. So that is how I first came into the world of gaming, when I saw somebody from school, I think, playing these consoles, and I just had to try it, and eventually I did get my own console. And that's what started my gaming journey. And later on, of course, I saw this thing called a computer. And of course, the first thing that you see, well, that I saw at least on a computer, was Excel and Word and all kinds of boring stuff like that. But then I think that at some point, I don't remember how, but I saw that these things can also run games. And that was amazing. That was like, wow, okay, that's like the fact that you can create these worlds in these machines and totally immerse yourself in them, that really blew my mind. And of course, then, because computers could run much more sophisticated games, then I hopped from these consoles to PC gaming. So that's my gaming thing. With regards to modding, I think that the first game that I ever modded in a way was Tiberian Sun, which is my favorite RTS game even today. I mean, I don't know why I love that game so much. I think the atmosphere, probably. But I played around with the units a little bit. I changed some stats, and I guess you would consider that modding. So that was my first modding experience. Later on, I created a graphical enhancement mod for a game called X to the Threat. Now I have the game box here. Here it is, X to the Threat. And by the way, kids, for those of you who bought their first game on Steam, this is how we used to buy games, in these boxes. Although my first games were never in these fancy boxes, they were also bootlegged games because, again, we couldn't really afford original and real games. So yeah, I'm not sure if YouTube is gonna like me talking about piracy, but again, when you're poor, you don't have any other options. It's either not playing at all or playing that. So yeah. So X to the Threat was the first game that I created an actual mod for, and then later on I actually moved and started. Okay, let me go back a little bit. So X to the Threat is developed by a German company called Egosoft. And Egosoft actually have this amazing thing which I wish Paradox would adapt. They have something called the X DevNet, and that is where they invite members of the community to help and participate in the development of their games. Now, I don't know how many companies have actually done that back in those days. I think it was like 2008, 7, something like that. But I signed up to this XDevNet, and at first I signed up to be a beta tester for their next title, which was X3 Reunion. And after that, I actually started participating in the development of the game. Now, I wasn't paid. All the people on XDevNet are volunteers. But it was definitely a very interesting experience. So I actually took part in developing this game. It's called X3 Terran Conflict. Now, unfortunately, if I remember correctly, in the credits, I'm only mentioned as something that has to do with the music. I actually edited some of the soundtrack tracks for the player, for the game. So that was my participation in this game, but I did also do some textures and stuff like that, but not to the extent probably to be in the credits for that. So X3 Terran Conflict came out, and then Egosoft were planning their next game. And I think that their next game was not so good. Yeah, the next game was not great, so I actually at this point decided to leave and not participate further in the development of this thing. And so many years passed by. I didn't actually participate in any way, not in modding and not in developing games. Okay, I don't know why the music is not playing all the files here, so let me just check that, because I do actually like having this music in the background. Yeah, okay. So some time passed by, and then well, I was a big fan of strategy games. I really liked strategy games. And then I suddenly saw a game called Europa Universalis 3, which was a grand strategy game. And back then there weren't a lot of grand strategy games, I think. In fact, I think that Paradox were the only company maybe to make these games. So I tried this Europa Universalis thing, and I loved it. It was amazing. So so that is how I got into Paradox games after playing Europa Universalis 3, and I think I actually created a few small mods for it as well, but I never published them, or it wasn't anything significant. But then I discovered Heartsfire 3, and I started playing that quite extensively. Although I have to say that there were aspects of Heartsfire 3 that I never truly understand, and before I actually got enough time, before I got enough time playing the game, I started modding it. Because one of the things that I wanted to create in Heartsfire 3 was a modern day mod, and that mod became the Modern Warfare mod for Heartsfire 3. Now it was released much later in development, because back then Paradox games were even much more buggy than they are today. Maybe Leviathan actually competes with the level that the games were released back then. But I decided to wait a bit until I actually start working on this mod. So after a few patches and DLCs came out for Heartsfire 3, I put out the mod, and the mod actually did quite well eventually, but at first I have to say that I did a really stupid marketing move by, let's say, pretending to include certain conspiracy theories in the mod that have no basis in reality. Now, this was seen by me as some kind of a PR move to draw attention to the mod, and in that sense it worked quite well. In the sense that I was perceived as some kind of conspiracy theorist, probably not so much of a good idea. So that was probably something that I would not do again. But back then there weren't many channels to advertise your mod. I mean, there was YouTube, but YouTube gaming didn't really pick up, and I don't think that many mods actually advertised their mod with YouTube. Recording gameplay was a nightmare. There were no proper programs to record gameplay in those times. So that was it. That's what I did, and it was silly, but again, the mod was very nice. I had a team of we were a team of 3 people. I had 2 other guys who were helping me. One of them, I think, until today works on the Millennium Dawn mod. And now, they were very talented guys. I believe that the mod really changed the game, and it was a very good modding experience. I mean, if I did not make the Modern Warfare mod for Heartsfire 3, we would probably not have the Iron Workshop, because once you mod Heartsfire 3, which is a nightmare to mod, as opposed to Heartsfire 4, Heartsfire 3 is hell. It is complete hell. Many times you would get crashes, and you would have no way to know why it crashed. There was no log, absolutely no way to know what went wrong. You always had to double back and change what you did, and then see what maybe has caused the problem. Hi everyone who is in the stream. Wow, I have to say there are a lot more people here than I expected. So yeah, I hope that you're not disappointed just by listening to me ramble. Alright, so that was Heartsfire 3, and a bit later Paradox have announced a game that is based on the Hearthstone 3 engine called East vs. West, which was set in the Cold War. And when that was announced, I decided that I need to get into the development of this game. I want to be a developer on this game. And basically what I did was to PM the game director, I think that was his title, and tell him like, dude, you want me to be on your team, okay? I can do a lot of stuff. Like, see what I did on the engine? I can do that in the game. And shockingly enough, they said, sure, come aboard. And that is how I got into the development team of East vs. West. Yeah, one second. Mountains, that's totally fine. You obviously don't need to apologize for anything that you do. That is totally fine. Okay, so I got into the development team of East vs. West, and it was a bit shocking. There were two aspects about the game that were quite good. The first one was that the game introduced a lot of provinces, and it actually managed to give all countries pretty much the same amount of provinces, which gave all the countries more or less the same strategic depth. And that is definitely something that we don't have even today. So that was quite an achievement. Unfortunately, the downside of that was that all of those provinces just completely grinded the game to a halt. The Hearthstone 3 engine just could not deal with all of those provinces. Now, I may be confusing my numbers, so don't quote me on this, but I think that Hearthstone 3 had about 12,000 provinces, and East vs. West had about 24,000. And the game just couldn't handle that. I mean, when I signed up on the team, yeah, I'll get to why it was cancelled quite soon. When I signed up to the team and I got my copy of the game and I started it up, I just couldn't run it. It was like working for me like frame by frame. And back then I had a pretty old system, right? I mean, like, my computer wasn't so good, but it did manage to run all the other Paradox games quite fine. So yeah, we've got, yeah, this is a bit okay. So it managed to run all the other games quite fine, but this one just was too slow. And I remember actually speaking to the members on the development team and asking them, like, guys, are you aware that this thing is barely running? And to my surprise, it was kind of shrugged, like, okay, no matter, we will deal with this, it will be fine, no big deal. So turned out that it was a big deal, but we'll get to that. So one more thing that East vs. West actually did very well was the interface and the graphics. They had a very, very, very talented guy. I think he was from Croatia, and he just did an amazing work with the graphics. It was really beautiful to see, to watch him work. The interface graphics and everything that involved player interaction was done so masterfully. I actually don't know if he works for Paradox today. I don't think so. Maybe he actually found a job at another company or something, but he was really talented and he did an amazing job. Um, yeah, so those are two things that East versus West did right. Now, besides that, now I have to say that before I talk too much, okay. I'll say it like this. I signed an NDA when I joined the team. Now, I'm not sure if it's expired by now or not, so I'm not sure if I can actually legally talk about what I'm talking here. Quais, thank you very much. 10k subs, truly amazing. So I'm not sure if I can actually talk about what I'm talking right now, but I'll try to go like between the drops, and that's probably not an expression in English. Sometimes I translate expressions, and not to get myself wet. So, right. So the development process of East versus West was quite disastrous. I mean, I think they had like 3 programmers, and only one of them was actually delivering on his work. The other 2, I remember when we had these weekly progress meetings, it was always like they would never deliver on what they were supposed to deliver, code-wise, right? They would just not do the work. So the game was not progressing forward, and it was really weird to watch. I'm not sure what happened there, because these people were paid, right? They were paid to do that work, and they just didn't do it. And so development just kept grinding and grinding and grinding, and things did not move forward. And at a certain point, I realized that this game is not really going anywhere. And what I did was something that was a bit, well, perhaps it was not the most ethical thing to do, but when I realized that the game wasn't really going anywhere, I decided that if we're going to lose this game, we might as well get something from it. So I took the map from East versus West, and I put it in my Hearthstone 3 mod, which turned out to be a complete mistake, again, because that completely killed the game and the mod, which was running very slowly for everyone. And so there was very little benefit in doing that. But yeah, after a while, as the development kept grinding on and on, eventually I left the team because I just didn't see the point in wasting my time to continue working on this thing that was not materializing. And then we had the delays, and of course eventually we had the cancellation when Paradox have decided that East versus West is just not a game that they can put out to the market. And that was a good call. I mean, at the time, it obviously caused a lot of outrage, and a lot of people were frustrated because it was a very promising game. Like, it sounded very fun to play in the Cold War. But the game was not ready for release at all. And if it were to be released, then it would be completely killed by reviewers and by the community, because nobody wants to play a broken game. And even at the level that games were released by then by Paradox, this was much worse. So good call on Paradox for not releasing East versus West. And who knows, maybe we'll see some kind of a Cold War game from them in the future, which might actually be good and successful this time. I hear a lot of people saying that Paradox don't want to release a Cold War game because it's too controversial, because you have things like the war in Vietnam and so on. But to be honest, I don't get these arguments for 2 reasons. First of all, we already have Paradox games that have things like slavery in them, and that is a very controversial subject. Second, we have World War II. Now, Paradox have dodged a very specific aspect of World War II, and let me say it like this. As somebody who lives in Israel, I hear about this aspect of the Second World War all the time. Our dear Prime Minister mentions it all the time whenever this country is criticized for doing anything. So if Paradox managed to dodge that aspect of the Second World War, then what does the Cold War have that is so horrible that Paradox just can't dodge and maybe not include, or include in a very limited capacity? I really don't understand this argument, and I really don't think that that's the reason why Paradox may not release a Cold War game. It's probably not because of that reason. Right, so that's me with East versus West. And now let's talk a bit about the Cold War mod. So after suspending the development of my mod for Hearthfire 3, because Hearthfire 4 came out, and because, as I said, mistakenly I have killed the mod by introducing the East versus map into it, it was time to decide on what's coming next. And one of the first ideas that, of course, I thought about was to develop a to develop a modern day mod for Hearthfire 4. And when I looked at the game, I decided that maybe I should wait to see if Paradox comes up with any features, built-in features, that could be served properly for a modern-day mod. So, for example, Hearthstone 3 actually had money in the game. It was built into the game. So if you wanted to introduce a modern-day mod to Hearthstone 3, it was a bit easier because it had money. Hearthstone 4 did not have money. All we have is these civilian factories which are supposed to represent money. But that is not the same thing. So I decided that I should wait, and that perhaps Hearthstone 4 is not a good game for a modern day mod. Now, for those of you who maybe have watched my review of Millennium Dawn, I have to say right now, hats off to the developers for doing everything they did so far to try and get a modern day mod into Hearthstone 4. I mean, I totally applaud the effort and the energy and the investment that they put into it. I mean, that is really admirable. People who go out of their way to do something which is very difficult to do. But as I said in my review, the attempt to do that is something that also kills the mod. The mod works very slowly because Hearthstone 4 is just not a game that can handle all of the calculations of combat with its very in-depth combat system and all the calculations that a modern economy requires. So despite Millennium Dawn trying to get an economy into Hearthstone 4, I just don't think that is the game that you can properly do it in. So that is why I've decided to drop the idea of introducing a modern day mod into Hearthstone 4. So as Hearthstone 4 continued, will you be doing mods for Victoria 3? That is a great question, and I will get to that in the end. Let me just write it down so that I don't forget it. Okay, yeah, we'll talk about that as well. As Hearthstone 4 continued, if at some point I realized that the game now has enough mechanics to maybe start working on a different project, a different timeline. And one of the reasons why I picked the Cold War mod and the Cold War period is because personally I wanted to learn more about that time period. Working on the modern day mod for Hearthstone 3 taught me a lot of stuff, and that process in itself, where you have to do research and learn about many other countries and experience in a way what those countries have experienced, is really a very rewarding thing to do. So I wanted to do the same thing for the Cold War period, which I wasn't very familiar with. And at some point I started I think in the movie industry they call it pre-production. So I started planning the mod and seeing how things might work. Before the mod came out, I was actually working for a year already on the mod by myself, trying to see how plausible it is to introduce a Cold War mod into the game. Hi everybody who joined the stream, welcome. So at some point Paradox have introduced the modding capability to create custom interfaces. And when that feature came out, I realized that I'm going to have to sacrifice one very important part of the Cold War, which is the economic part. I realized that it would be a mistake to try to put economics into the game. But this feature now allowed me to do something very different. And instead of focusing on the economic aspects, I can focus on the diplomatic aspects. And luckily, I was right. Yes, scripted GUIs are very hard to make both. I totally agree, and it took me quite a while to learn how to create these. Polski Lu FPS, about creating new maps. I will talk about that very soon. Right, so I started playing around with a couple of interfaces, and the first thing that I started actually working on, let me just change the music because this one is getting annoying. So the first interface that I started working on was called the Influence Battles, and I actually had a trailer for it on the channel a very long time ago, and it was a very complex game mechanic that I worked on, and I've made significant progress for it, and I thought that it was ready for release. But at some point I figured that it was time to explain how the mechanic works. Now, one of the things that was very flawed with this system was that the AI could not properly deal with it. And this is something that's true for all mechanics introduced into Hearthstone 4. As far as AI logic modding, we are still very much limited, and it is very difficult to get the AI to use new mechanics properly. And that is probably true for other Paradox titles as well, not just Hearthstone 4. So at a certain point, I started trying to explain how the feature worked. And then I realized that it's very, very difficult for me to explain how it works. And if it's very difficult for me as somebody who has worked on it, then how difficult would it be for somebody who is new to the mod and is trying to play around with it? And after working for, I think it was almost a year that I worked on this feature, I decided to not release it and to remove it from the mod, because it was not user friendly, and because I knew that nobody would be able to properly understand how to enjoy this feature. So it had to be cut. But alongside that feature, I was also working on another smaller feature, which was the UN Security Council feature. And this was not something that I expected, but eventually it did turn to be the centerpiece feature of the mod. And it was a much simpler feature both for the AI to manage and for the player to understand. So it made it into the mod, and I have to say that with all the work that's been done on the Cold War mod, that is the feature that I'm most proud of. And yeah, I don't know if I should be talking about this, but well, you know what? Hell, let's put our cards on the table, because it's 100K and that only okay, it's 10K and that doesn't happen every day. So I actually talked to Paradox about putting the UN Security Council feature into Hearthfire 4 as a DLC, which I would take the sole responsibility for developing and maintaining and supporting, because I thought that it could give really new life to the game, to the end game, where you finish the big war, and then you have this whole new system, whole new mechanic to interact with, to create the new world, order. And I think personally that it could have been a really interesting idea. Another idea that was floating in my mind was to actually change the UN Security Council feature into a League of Nations feature that would be there from the start of the game and would make diplomacy much deeper in Hearthfire 4. So that is something that I think the entire Hearthstone 4 player base could have enjoyed as part of as my effort that would not have gone to complete waste. Unfortunately, Paradox rejected that idea. I guess they have other plans. Maybe they have features of their own that they're planning. And so now that I'm off the team and off the Cold War mod, I can't tell you how this feature is going to be developed further, and personally I think it would be a shame to let it go to waste. Yeah, McBoat, we are talking about non-historical things. So historically, the League of Nations was very limited, but obviously, yeah. But yeah, since the future was planned to be UN Security Council, that end game would probably be better. And another reason for that is because at the start of the game and the middle of the game, we have plenty of content in Hearthstone 4. It's the end game that's really lacking, because you finish this thing and then you don't really have much to do. It's over. So this could really put a whole new layer into the game, and I don't know. I wish it could have happened, but obviously it did not. Right, so what else we've got here? Okay, so now let's talk a bit about why I had to stop working on the Cold War mod. Now, the first reason, which I explained, obviously, was that in part due to the to COVID-19, I lost my job, and creating total conversion mods for a game like Hearthstone 4 is a very, very grueling and difficult task. There are many aspects to it. I mean, I could talk about this probably for like 10 hours, so I'm really trying to find the words to keep it short. But the amount of hours that I've spent working on the mod is unimaginable. I mean, I had weeks where I would wake up in the morning, and before I go to work, I would work on the mod. At work, I would sometimes connect to my home computer to work on the mod. After returning home from work, I would once again sit until the very late hours to work on the mod. Now, part of this was because I was working on the mod alone. Now, the reason that I was working alone on the mod, there were probably a couple of reasons. The first reason was that the mod came pretty late, and a lot of the talented people who had modding experience, or that maybe were talented graphic artists and knew how to do other things, were already taken by the bigger projects, by other big projects. So the manpower pool, which is very limited, I mean, even today you can see that a lot of these modding projects are always asking for more people to come over to help with their project, and they need graphic artists and people who actually have skills with modding. And when the Cold War mod arrived, that pool has shrunk significantly, because a lot of the people who were available just went into these teams, so obviously I could not recruit them for the Cold War mod. Another reason was that in a way it was easier for me, at least at first, to work alone, because for those of you who never had a modding team, you have to understand that once you okay, I'll say it like this. When you have one person working on a mod, then you have only one opinion about how things should work. When you have two people working on a mod, then you have 5 opinions on how things should be in the mod. When you have 4 people working on a mod, you probably already have 15 opinions on how everything should be done. So it is very, very difficult to not waste a lot of time just arguing with endless arguments and discussions that go nowhere about how this should be done, how this should be done, why is this better, why is this better, why is this bad, and so on and so on. So in a way, it was much easier for me to spare myself all of this and just focus, build the foundations of the mod, and then later on maybe bring in more people that have to work with a structure that already exists. And like, not everyone has to always input and then maybe drastically change your work, and then you have to adjust everything and again spend so much time on testing and adjusting, blah blah blah, and all of those things. So this is definitely another reason why for a very long time I was working alone on the mod. I have to say that for a mod that was... No, okay, I'll say it like this. In a way, I was very, very lucky, I guess, working on the mod, because at a certain point, when I was younger, I've decided that maybe I want to be a graphic artist. So I started teaching myself things like Photoshop. And I won't say that I'm great at creating graphics. There are people who do much better work than I do. But I do have the fundamentals of it. And there are things that I know how to make. So not being dependent on anyone else to create graphics for the mod was very easy for me. And that is probably what allowed me to actually put out a total conversion mod as a single developer. But of course, creating all of those graphics again took a very long time, and this is something that I will talk a bit more about later on. But we have to acknowledge the fact that we are moving in a very difficult direction when it comes to modding. And the amount of people who will be able to create mods is actually shrinking, because Paradox games are becoming more visual. And as things like 3D is introduced, then you need a larger skill set to create much more engaging mods. So that is a problem, but we'll talk about that. So I put out the mod, and the Security Council feature, which was not meant to be the core feature of the mod when I first started making it, became the core feature of the mod, and then I started just wrapping everything around it. And I have to say that I think that it worked out quite well. Now, we'll get back to why I had to stop working on the mod, because again, all of these features required too much of my time, and I just couldn't continue to put in so much time. And definitely after no longer having a full-time job to support myself, I just couldn't sit around and mod a game for Hot Iron 4 that was returning very little, despite all the support that I got via Patreon and other places. It was just no longer financially viable for me. And I have to say that this is very, very very sad for me, because I put in so much effort and time into this mod. I mean, really, the amount of energy and sacrifice that I made for this project is nothing that I have done before. And removing myself from working on it was really a difficult choice. I delayed it for as long as possible, but eventually reality sinks in, and you realize that even if you love doing this thing very much, you can't just sacrifice everything else because of it. And I wish I could go on. I really do. I'm really disappointed that I had to do this, and I didn't really want to leave Rootin' Putin and Great Ian Empire, as you know them, who are now working on the mod, to work on it by themselves, because I knew how much effort and how difficult it is. But unfortunately, it had to be done. So that is my story with the Cold War mod. Same as with the Iron Workshop channel, I hope that it allowed some of you, those of you who have played, to maybe learn something about the time period. I hope it brought some of you enjoyment. And that is really, I think, one of the few things that matters as people who work on games without being paid for it can enjoy. That is one of those small things that we really take to heart when we have people saying that they enjoyed something that we've created and that they would like us to make more. Right. So so that is why I had to stop working on the mod. I don't know if I'll actually go back to working on this project. Who knows, maybe if I make millions and I don't know, maybe if I win the lottery and I now have millions in my bank account, and I don't ever have to worry about spending time to actually make money. So yeah. Next we will talk about why there are certain things or certain modding lessons that are not on the Iron Workshop. Motivation on modding. McBoat, very good question. And you know what? Let's leave that to the end, and I'll definitely drop a couple of words about it as well. Thank you very much. Right. So one of the two questions that I get asked quite a bit about modding lessons on the Iron Workshop is, first of all, why is there no modding lesson on creating a whole new world map? Now, there's a very simple reason for it. You have to understand that when I make modding lessons, I try to make something that will be usable and could help as many people as possible. So it is very problematic for me to make things that are very specific. And I have no idea what kind of a map somebody might want to make. Is it a map that has rivers? Is it a map that doesn't have rivers? How much of the terrain will be changed? Will there be new weather in the map? I don't know. How big the map is going to be? What is the purpose of the map? What is the world the map is set in? So it is very difficult to create a proper modding tutorial to create a whole new world map when I have no idea what people might be creating. I could make one lesson where I explain how to create a certain type of map, and then somebody wants to create something that is very different, and the process is also very, very different. And they will encounter issues that maybe somebody who's making the exact same map as I'm making may not encounter. So when it comes to things like this, I try not to go there, because one thing which I'm really, really concerned about is not to confuse people who are watching my tutorials. I don't want somebody watching a tutorial and just be confused about, okay, so what am I supposed to do with this? This doesn't help me at all. So what was the point in making it? And these can take quite a while to make. So that is something which up until now I've decided not to make, and I can't see myself making it on the channel in the near future. So we won't have that. Another thing which was mentioned quite a bit, and a lot of people have asked me, is why is there no modding lesson on creating new 3D models for the game? And the simple answer would be is because personally I don't know much about 3D modeling myself, and 3D modeling is not the same as replacing a picture in the game. It is a much more complex process. You need good free 3D modeling software. Now, unfortunately, there is some software available right now, and I don't want to make any promises, but I am looking into it. Next, in order to create proper models, there are two other things which you need to be good at making. You need to know how to make textures. Now, am I supposed to teach in that one lesson how to 3D model and create textures? That would probably be a modding lesson that is over 40 minutes. Now, I'll tell you a secret. A lot of people who look for modding lessons are looking for the shortest ones. They want to know how to get something done in the shortest time possible. Now, on top of creating a model, a 3D model, let's call it the 3D mesh, and the textures, which is the graphic editing of that model, you also need to animate. Now we need to learn animation. Now, should I also teach how to create animations in that lesson as well? Now we are going into a lesson that could stretch into 2 hours. I'm not sure how many people are going to actually go into that and actually watch it. Second of all, it will be very draining for me to create such a lesson. Now I could break it into 3 separate lessons. That is something that is possible, and it is something that I have considered, but again, nothing concrete at this point. So 3D modeling is a really complex thing that at this time I really don't know enough of to actually get a proper lesson on. And that is why we don't have any lessons on the subject on the Iron Workshop. Hopefully that is something that will change in the future. One of the reasons why I really wanted to change is because I think that a lot of us can clearly see that that is where we are heading. If you look at Crusader Kings 3, all the characters in the game are 3D models. Now, we do have a character creation tool now, but if you're using that tool, you're still limited by the assets that Paradox have in the game, right? So if you want a character with a certain hairstyle, then you can pick from hairstyles that are available in the game. But you can't actually introduce something completely new. And in order to do that, you will need to 3D model that thing. And because we are moving in that direction, it is obvious to me that at a certain point, this is something that both myself as a modder and everyone who is watching the channel will need to maybe start getting into in order to be able to continue to mod Paradox games. So that's that. Now again, no promises, but all I can say at this point is that I'm looking into how to maybe get this thing sorted and hopefully introduce in a way that is easy to understand and is not too complex. Amo Grainwald. Okay, that is cool. I happen to be learning that as well. So, yeah, you should know how complex it is. And obviously, when you're doing it, it's one thing. But when you have to explain it, then that is a whole different thing. All right, so now let's get to the future of Paradox modding. And of course, we talked about this a little bit already. So Paradox games are becoming more complex to mod. And I have to say that I don't think that Paradox are doing enough to support their modding community with the difficulties that we have ahead of us. Even if we look at PDXCon, the last one, I think that there was one modding panel on it. It's like modding has been a very small aspect of it, and honestly I don't understand why. I think that we need more transparency from Paradox when it comes to modding, and one of the things that Paradox could offer modders are tools for creating the assets that they use in their games. For example, even in non-3D stuff, in Hearthstone 4 we have all of the focuses and we have all of the backgrounds for them. Now, I'm pretty sure that Paradox have these assets, and they know that modders want to use these assets to make their mods blend better with the game. So why not give us modders, to all modders, without giving preferential treatment to big mods? And that is also an issue that I have problems with, because Paradox seem to be giving preferential treatment to certain mods. Why not give all modders access to these resources? Because at the end of the day, this is still true that Paradox games and the modding community are very closely linked together, and mods actually encourage people sometimes to even buy their games, and mods definitely keep people playing their games. So really investing even in a small way in the modding community by providing more tools and more assets for Paradox in the long run will give Paradox a lot of benefits. Like, it will be very beneficial for Paradox, I think, to do that. And right now, I don't think that that is the mindset at Paradox. I think that Paradox are still stuck in this mindset where, like, okay, we'll do the games, we'll put in the modding infrastructure, like the code, and that is all we have to do. That is our end of the bargain. We don't need to do anything else. And I think that's wrong. I mean, modding is such a huge part of your games. Why isn't the modding community more involved in the production or development of your games? I mean, as a person who, and I talked about it during this stream, as a person who worked for free on games, on developing games, I'm sure that there are a lot of people who, even people who maybe want to get some experience in the gaming industry, would love to work for Paradox even for free for a while in helping making their games. So I think that introducing some kind of development environment for modders where they can contribute to the making of these games, and in return Paradox giving us more tools and more assets for modders to improve their mods, everybody will benefit. I really don't know why Paradox is not moving in this direction, and I hope they will. I hope there will be a change in this mindset where it's like we do the games and the modding infrastructure, and the modders are left fending for themselves. It's wrong. I think that improving this aspect could help everybody and make things better for everyone. Even small things like more complex documentation. Like even today, the modding wikis sometimes have a lot of missing information. Now, I know that they're updated by the community, but would it really hurt if Paradox assigned somebody from inside of Paradox to, let's say, coordinate the relationship between the modding community, their needs, and Paradox? I mean, they have community managers, but I never got the feeling that these community managers are somehow deeply involved with the modding community. They are involved with the community and let's say the non-modding community, but as far as modders go, I never felt that there was any heavy emphasis there. All right, so the future of Paradox modding, we even have that in Hearthstone 4. I mean, if you think about Hearthstone 4, as somebody who modded Hearthstone 3 and Hearthstone 4, I can tell you that there was a big leap in how much more difficult it was in making a good mod for Hearthstone 4. One reason was portraits. I mean, when Paradox introduced the leader portraits, naturally there was a much higher bar for modders to reach the same level of quality in portraits that the base game has. And if a mod doesn't have that, then it's considered less than maybe other mods who have that. And that is a significant leap. And now I think that we're moving into the next stage where it's like, it's no longer portraits, now it's whole 3D models, where if you don't know 3D modeling and you don't know how to texture, then you're dependent on people who might know that. And that is okay as long as those people are available. But if they're not available, then I fear that there will be a lot of people who might just give up on modding for a pretty bad reason, and that would be a shame. I think that something else that Paradox could do, if they're creating these portraits in-house, maybe they could release an official tutorial that shows you how to do this with professional or even non-professional tools, maybe free tools. If it's possible, then why not? Now, some of you or some people out there might say that that is not the job of a game developer. Why should they waste their time on things like these? But as I said before, I think that because modding is so central and is such a big part of Paradox games, then Paradox would have a lot of benefits from doing this. So it is for their own good, and it is definitely for the good of the modding community. Yeah. Right, so that is our future of Paradox modding. Alright, so yeah, I think I've covered almost all the topics that I wanted to talk about. Now let's talk about mods for Victoria 3. So will I be making mods for Victoria 3? Okay, so sadly I have to say that I probably won't be making any total conversion mods for Victoria 3. Because again, those take a lot of time and a lot of energy, a lot of effort, and as somebody who still doesn't have proper constant income, I would prefer not to go for financial ruin just to create a total conversion mod for Victoria 3, even if I really, really want to do it. And trust me, I really want to do it. But with that said, it doesn't mean that I will not be creating smaller mods for Victoria 3. I have done so for Hearthfire 4. I have released my long sitting in the basement mod for Victoria 2. So it's quite probable that I will be making small mods for Victoria 3 to enhance the gameplay, maybe to enhance the graphics, things like that. Also, creating mods is a good way to learn about the game and how to mod it. So as I make these mods, I can also learn better how to mod it, and then I can create modding lessons on modding the game. So win-win situation. A friend is good point. We actually still don't know if Victoria 3 is going to be a good game. Now, I know that this might be blasphemy and that a lot of us want it to be an amazing game, and I certainly hope it will be an amazing game, but we have to be realistic and wait until the final product is out, and then we'll know if it's worth modding. I mean, I mentioned that there were quite a few people who really felt like the ground was swept from their feet when Imperator Rome was cancelled. Because I know that Imperator Rome also had a lot of modding projects, and the people who were working on these mods probably expected a product that would be supported for a long time, and that the player base might grow, and their mods might improve with more features introduced into the game. But once the game was cancelled, then that did not materialize. So we definitely don't want to have that situation for Victoria 3. Now, I can imagine that even before the game is out, there will probably already be announcements about mods that will be available for Victoria 3 and how great they're going to be, and so on and so forth. I would take that with a grain of salt. People who promise you awesome mods for Victoria 3 even before the game is out, yeah, perhaps not. So let's wait until the game is out at least, and then get excited about it. Yeah. So, Simyaki Azimai, I did not give my mod to anybody. I just stepped down from being the lead developer of the mod. The mod is currently being developed by other people. Yes. Okay. So now let's talk about modding motivation. And credits go to McBoat for suggesting this topic. Right. So, what can I actually say about this topic? Now, I didn't really prepare for it, so this will be off the cuff, as they say. Let's see. First of all, despite everything that I said during this stream, I do have to say that if you're passionate about creating a mod, not just for Hearthfire 4, but any game, any Paradox game, or any even non-Paradox game, then I think that you should definitely give it a try. Despite the fact that I could not continue to work on the Cold War mod, I certainly don't regret giving it a try. And currently the mod has around 40,000 subscribers on Steam. And you know, for a project that was mainly developed by one person and that doesn't have a lot of flashy features like an economy system and I don't know, all of those other features that are supposed to be so great, I'm satisfied with the result, and it definitely brought me a lot of joy, especially when things started to come together and connect. And when you finally had a stretch of like 5 years in the mod that you could play that had really rich content, and you could even play multiplayer and enjoy this content with other people, that was really an amazing feeling. And I really do encourage all of you to pursue that feeling and go after it if you're passionate about creating a mod. So definitely don't give up on it even before you gave it a try. But of course you need to be ready. Before you start a project, a modding project, take into account what is it that you want to do, and set your goals properly. A lot of mods and even like full retail games have failed because they did not set their goals straight. You need to know what your mod is about. What are the features that you want to have in the mod, at least let's say for the first release, and what is actually possible in the game to do, right? So one aspect that I talked about is that you can put a lot of features into the game, specifically Hearthfire 4, but other games are also go into this category. But for a lot of these features, you will also need to teach the AI how to use them. And that really complicates things, because when you put something like, let's take for example an economy system with money and GDP and all of those things, putting it into the game is one thing. Letting a player use the system is one thing. And these two things might work great on their own. But once the AI has to start using these systems, they could completely fall apart. So take that into consideration whenever you're introducing something new to your mod. Now, the Hearthstone 4 focuses are a curse and a blessing in this regard, because focuses are something that allows for minimal AI teaching, right? I mean, you just tell the AI, do this focus, and then this thing will happen in the game. So if you're just creating focuses, then you probably don't have too much to worry in that regard. But even if you're doing things like introducing events and decisions, then if these decisions and events have more than one option, and the AI is also supposed to interact with them, then you need to start considering how the AI will see these decisions, in what circumstances it's going to have to deal with these, and how it should respond to them. So I guess the first thing that I would recommend is that sit down, plan your mod, and think about what is going to be, what aspects of the mod are going to be engaging with the AI, and do you know enough in order to put that into your mod. Now, one thing, and this is something that I've actually considered doing with the Cold War mod, one thing that you could do is that you could create a multiplayer only mod. Now, there is no in-game restriction that you could put, although you could remove the single player button from the main menu. That is one way to bypass it. But if you create a multiplayer mod only, then that makes your job much easier. Of course, we have AI in multiplayer, but if the main players that are going to engage with the mod are only humans, then that could make things much easier for you. Right. Another thing is that let me think about how to phrase this. Okay, yeah, I'll put it this way. When you start working on your mod, it is completely natural for it to seem like an impossible task. I mean, let's think about it. When I started my Cold War mod, there were no focuses, no graphics, no security council, and the game was set in 1939 or 1936, whatever, the start date, right? So there was nothing there. So how do you go from that to having something that feels like it's in the Cold War period? It looks completely like impossible, and that like this is not something that can be done, right? But if you're passionate about it, I can tell you that a lot of things can be done. It will involve a lot of creativity. Modding and programming, I guess, has to do a lot with problem solving. So even if you put your countries on the map and you have the focuses, a lot of times you will find yourself having to solve problems that have to do with the fact that the base game was built for a very specific purpose. And you'll need to find a way to bypass this restriction. And oftentimes it will seem like there is no way. I can't tell you the amount of times during the development of the Cold War mod that I wanted to do something and the game was like, no, you can't do it. This is not working. It's not gonna work. And after trying again and again and again and again, I was like, okay, it's impossible. It's not working. And that causes a lot of frustration. But it's really amazing how all of these things that seemed to be impossible at the time when I encountered them eventually got solved. It's quite strange, I have to say, but one of the things that I learned is that oftentimes when you have a certain thing that you're trying to do and you're encountering issues and you hit a wall and you can't actually get it done, one good thing that you can do is to just drop it for a while. Oftentimes, the solution will present itself even if you're not working on it. You could take your time and work on something else, and then suddenly, for no reason I guess, a thought pops into your head and you're like, wait, why didn't I try to do it another way that just came to my head? And then suddenly it works. I really can't explain this phenomenon. I mean, I don't know why it happens, but it did happen many times for me, where I was stuck, I was super frustrated, I was like, okay, this sucks, I can't do it, that's it, I'm not working on this mod anymore, I hate it, I'm not doing this anymore, it's awful, it's terrible, this game hates me, it won't let me do what I want to do, that's it, this is stupid, I'm not doing this. And then a couple of days would pass, and then suddenly I'm like, wait, this works now? Why didn't I try it before? Like, what did I get so upset over? But it just happens. It just happens, and that is something that you may encounter occasionally when you work on your mod. So, tip number 2, I guess, is to realize that sometimes when you hit a wall and there's something which seems impossible to do, the best thing to do is to just drop it and give it a try sometime later. A bit strange, but it seems to be working. Right. Let's see. What else? Oh, yes, this is actually very important. And unfortunately, this is not something that I think that I'm giving enough emphasis for on the Iron Workshop. You need to be well prepared to start reverse engineering. Like, a lot of people in the comments often ask me, okay, how do I create this thing which either exists in the base game or exists in another mod? And the simple answer is to just go into that thing, that feature, and just reverse engineer it. See how it works, see how the code is built, copy it over to your mod and start manipulating it. Start adjusting it to whatever you need it to do for your own purposes. And there's nothing wrong with that. I can tell you that the Security Council feature for the Cold War mod would not exist if there was not a mod on the Steam Workshop that's called the League of Nations mod. It's a very small mod. The guy who made it is obviously a very talented coder. He writes amazing code. I mean, he does stuff in there that maybe stuff that I don't even know how to do. I think he has programming experience, which obviously helps. And once I saw that thing, I was like, okay, so it seems like it's actually possible to do something like this. So I took his work. I didn't copy it, of course. I just saw what he did, how he did it, and then I applied whatever worked for my mod. Now, I didn't copy the code one for one because if you take a look at the two systems, they're quite different. They do different things. They do these things differently. But there were a lot of similarities. So just taking something that already exists and learning from it is very helpful for modders. And don't hesitate to do it. Now, if obviously you're using the work of somebody else, then definitely give them credit. But if you're just using it as inspiration and to learn from it, then that is completely fine, and you should definitely do it and not be scared of doing it. If your game will crash, you will have a lot of frustrating moments. Sometimes you will not understand why something is the way that it is. But really reverse engineering and seeing the work of other people who have done something that is similar to what you want to do is one of the best ways to learn how to make something that you want to make. Right. Okay, so that's, I guess, tip number 3, reverse engineering. Right, so here we are. We're at 10K subscribers on the Iron Workshop. And we're actually past that already. This feels quite humbling and amazing. And I will definitely continue to do this as long as it is viable for me to continue to do it. And I'm very happy to help as many people as possible with modding, with creating the worlds that they want to create. And of course, one of the main reasons for that is because I know how hard it is when you don't even have the basics to start. I mean, when I started modding Hearthstone 3, there was no Iron Workshop. There were very few places in which you could actually learn how to mod the game. Most of my modding experience in Hearthstone 3 was trial and error. So it was just doing something, failing, trying it in a different way, and trying again and again and again until something worked. And I think that if there was a place that could show me the basics and perhaps give me some warnings about things that could happen that are not my fault, right? I mean, when you're doing something and it doesn't work and it crashes, sometimes it can be the fault of the game. It's not even your fault, but there's no way for you to know that. So it's nice. So it's nice to know that, and I can definitely see the importance of having something like this for people who are just starting their modding adventure. Right. Okay. So I think we'll end the stream at this point. Next Friday, we will go back to Victoria 2. Now, my previous Victoria 2 game was Spain, and it was what I guess would be called a cursed game. It went really, really bad. So I don't think we'll be returning to that game. I also think that I lost the save game. I'm not really a great streamer, so I keep losing stuff that I probably shouldn't be losing. So we'll start a new game, and hopefully this one will not be as cursed. Another thing that I'm considering is to do another stream during the week. And I was thinking about Crusader Kings 3. Because I do like the game. I hate the fact that it's so low on content, but I do enjoy the game. So I'm thinking of starting streaming Crusader Kings 3 as well. Of course, when Victoria 3 comes out, the Iron Workshop will have modding lessons for that. And if the game is good, then we'll definitely have some streams for Victoria 2 as well. So, yeah. Right. Okay, so a big thank you to everyone who watched this stream. I did not expect so many of you to be watching. I figured there would be like 3 people. But a lot more of you turned out, and that is really flattering, and I truly thank you. Everybody who watched, everybody who participated in the chat. If there are any questions that I did not answer, let's give them a go quickly. But if not, then we'll say goodbye, and we'll see you next week. Yes, so Simaki Azimai, you have a problem in Hearthstone 4 modding. You can't create more than 3 focuses. So I would suggest that you go to the Iron Workshop Discord channel. There's a link in the main channel page, and you could ask on the Discord channel for help, and I have no doubt we'll figure it out. You could use a focus manager like McBoat suggests, but that is something which I personally do not recommend, because I think that it doesn't get you into the modding and writing the code. So as somebody who's new, it's probably better to use that. Alright, so we don't have any more questions. Again, thank you all very much for watching. I love you all. Thank you for supporting the channel. Thank you for supporting me and my work, and I will see you next week. Bye bye.